Hello and welcome back to another video by myself, Kelvin. Today we're going to be looking at protecting your home network with the Sophos UTM Home Edition. This is a knowledge transfer session with myself. It's been a while since I've delivered one of these because I've been focusing on other videos as well as other things outside of producing videos, as those that follow me will probably know. Nevertheless, I wanted to deliver this video because Sophos UTM, I believe, is a fairly good product for home networks, home environments, and I think with the shift to remote and hybrid working, and generally the use of a home network now and how it's changed over the last couple of years, I think it's fairly important that home users are looking at different ways to protect their network. The traditional antivirus solution on your computer, it just may not be good enough anymore. So this video hopefully is providing that awareness for you to be able to further protect, that is, your home network. And if you don't have the technical expertise or knowledge to carry out this, then I do recommend that you look to somebody that does have that technical knowledge. You can always reach out to myself on YouTube or any of my other platforms, my website or Twitter, where I'm fairly active, and I will do my best to reply. Those that are local to me, I don't mind coming and setting this up if you want to go down that path. Anyway, let's get into this now. So, protecting your home network with the Sophos UTM Home Edition. So, what is the Sophos UTM Home Edition? Well, it's a free unified threat management solution, and what that basically means is it's a security product that has multiple security features built in. So, and it's free, as I say. This edition is totally free to home users to use, and you can benefit from what you can see there on the screen and more. So we can use this device as a firewall to protect your home network. You can also use this UTM if you are looking at using VPN, so connecting back to your home network or to other networks. You can also use this device if you are concerned about web applications that you may be visiting, if you want to block certain websites or certain locations, you can also do that. So there's a lot of things you can do with this UTM solution. And like I say, it's totally free, so there is no hidden charges or hidden fees once you actually download and install and get this solution up and running. It's totally free, and as I say, it's built or designed for the use within a home network. So what do you need to get started? Now, this is where the technical element comes in. So I fully appreciate those that may not be as technical or technical at all, may not have a clue what they are looking at now on the screen. Don't worry though, as I say, if you know anybody technical or you want to give it a go yourself and reach out to me for additional answers to questions that you might have, then feel free to do so. So to get started, you do need a virtual environment. So VMware is one that is recommended for use. You need a device that's capable of routing with at least one virtual CPU, 4 gigs of RAM, 2 network interface cards, and 80 gigabytes worth of storage. Now that should be sufficient for this device, and the good thing about this is If you have an old device laying around, maybe an old computer that has 2 network interface cards and is capable of routing, with some configuration on there, then it's possible that you could actually install VMware onto that machine, and with the specifications on the screen, you can get this set up and running in your home network. I recommend 2 Ethernet cables, or I will say you need 2 Ethernet cables, and they'll connect to both network interface cards. And essentially those network ports will act as an inside port to your network to protect. So everything behind that will be protected by this UTM. And then the other network interface card will be used to route the traffic out. I have put there that you need basic networking knowledge. As I said before, it just helps being able to get this set up. And as well, basic virtualization knowledge, because you are working with a VM here and virtual interfaces, etc., etc. So the demonstration, I tried to keep as simple as possible. And what you can see here is, we've got what we like to say is the internet connection, and that's coming from your ISP router. So whether that's for those in the UK, that might be your Virgin or your Sky or your TalkTalk router, which is currently providing you with the wired and wireless connectivity out to the internet. The Sophos XG, which will become the virtual firewall or unified threat management solution as we know it. And then behind that, as I said, would be your home network. So what I've done here is I've just highlighted it with a home PC. The networking knowledge comes into play here, because if we just get up the pen here. So if we wanted to just move this up here. So essentially what we have, as I say, is in a typical network, we'll have this ISP router here that you can see on screen, and you'll connect via wireless with, let's say, your mobile phone here, and then you'll route out to the internet. Job done. You'll also have some network interface ports where you can connect in, your PC, and then again route out to the internet there. Now, because just get rid of that. Because we are going to be basically using the Sophos XG UTM solution as a device to protect our internal network, we don't want to be using the ISP provided router. So this device would essentially change into what we call modem only mode. So essentially all it's doing is it's just going to pass traffic out to the internet, and then this device will essentially act as the device that the ISP router was acting as. The only thing here is that because it's a virtual appliance, we're not going to be connecting anything wireless to this virtual appliance, because it just cannot happen. So we've got the 2 network interface cards. We've got this one here, and we say that, let's say this one's the outside one. So everything on this side of the device is essentially now untrusted. We don't use this side of the network apart from routing the traffic out to the internet. Everything in here and this side of the network is classed as trusted, and we want to protect this. So your question might be, well, how do we connect wireless devices such as your smartphones and tablets and gaming consoles and whatnot? To do that, what you're going to need to do, let's just backtrack a little bit. This home PC is just showing the use of that additional network interface that I said we would need, and this is going to be classed as the inside network, if you like. So we all know that these days in home networks, the chances of devices being connected wired is very slim, and the chances of having only one device is also very slim. So what we typically do to allow to connect more devices and to allow for wireless devices, let's just take this out of here. And what we do is we would need, or you would need, to go out and purchase another router. And you can get these from, again, if you're in the UK, you can get these from Currys, you can get them from Amazon, eBay, anywhere basically that sells tech. You should be able to get a router. And essentially what you would need is just a normal router. And let's just say this is the router, and apologies for my shabby drawing. And this router would also be capable of doing wireless, or connecting devices wireless, the same essentially as your ISP was capable of doing. You would then configure this router with one port connecting to that Sophos XG, or that virtual network interface card. And then, you'd have your additional ports then on this device here. Let's say we've got 4 free ports where you can connect wired devices in your home network. Let's call this home network. And then you could also, as well, because it's capable of doing wireless, or connecting devices wireless, and let's just say this is our wireless signal, we could then connect, say, our phones and tablets and laptops that are wireless capable as well. And then basically all this router would do then is all that traffic, all that data that needs to go out to the internet would essentially come down here, it'd come into this port here, it'd hit the UTM, and then it'd be subject to whatever you've got configured. Let's say it's firewall rules, and then again it'd just pass straight out to the internet and back again. So you can see here how this Sophos XG is quite an important device, because we want to be able to protect everything in the home network behind this firewall. This is the device that's going to be doing the heavy lifting, the firewalling. It's going to be making sure that we can only access relevant websites. I think it's got an antivirus solution on there as well. It's got an intrusion prevention system on there as well. So this is going to be doing all the heavy lifting. So we want to make sure that we are no longer using this ISP device for wireless devices. Turn that off. So turn wireless off for that. And the only interface that we need connected here is the interface connecting into the Sophos XG. And then, obviously you'll have your connection out to the internet as well. So I hope that's all made sense. Again, if it's not, please do reach out on under this video, on my website, wherever you can get hold of me. Reach out if you want to understand more about what I've just said. And if you're not technical at all, just try to speak to somebody that is technical and understands what I've just spoken about here. So demonstration wise, we're going to look at setting this up. Now mine's going to be slightly different. We're not going to be looking at the ISP router in this case, because I'm going to be doing this in a fully virtualized environment. However, I will show you how we can configure the Sophos UTM. I've put Sophos XG there, but ignore that. Sophos have an XG firewall as well that you can use. We're just going to focus on the Sophos UTM today. Nevertheless, we're going to focus today on getting this Sophos UTM configured with the two interfaces, and what we'll do is we'll show how some of the features can work as well, and just give you a general feel of the user interface as well. Again, the purpose of this is to really encourage you to look at enabling more security within your home network to better protect your devices, your data, and the things that your children or even yourself visit online as well and interact with. So before we start, the first thing that we need to do is we need to register on the Sophos website. I'll include this link in this presentation as well, so don't worry about that. But essentially, you just make your way over to the Sophos website, get to the Sophos UTM Home Edition. You can see here free home license once you sign up, and then you should be able to get the software and download that as well. You can see there it protects up to 50 IP addresses. That should be more than enough for general home networks as well, so no need to worry there. And it just gives you a brief breakdown of what I've already discussed really. So put your details in there: first name, last name, email address. If you want updates, then select that. If you don't, then leave it. Submit that, and then you'll get an email, and that should include your license there as well. So with all that fluff out of the way, let's get started with the actual demonstration itself. So I'm using ESXi as a virtual environment to install the Sophos UTM. So we'll just get that up now. So what we need to do now is, providing you've downloaded the ISO file and you've added that to your data store within your virtual environment, we need to now create the specification or the configuration for the actual Sophos UTM. So we'll do that now. So we'll just do typical in this case. We need to give it a name, so let's just call it Sophos UTM. And I'll call it demo, and then we'll go to next. Select your data store that should be used for the storage, and then under the guest operating system, we need to specify a guest operating system. So for this, what we're going to do is we'll do other Linux 64. So we go to Linux and we'll do other 3.x or later Linux 64. In fact, oh no we won't. So on Linux we need to now select other Linux 64, and then we'll do next. Now what we need to do is specify how many network interface cards we want to connect. Because of the device, we need a minimum of 2, as I mentioned, so the inside and the outside. So we'll select 2 there. And then again, I'm not going to cover all of the setting up the network interface cards. I assume that if you are looking at following on, you have knowledge of doing this. So what I will do now is I'll select my networks for my network interface cards as well. And in fact, I will leave the second one because I do need to create another one. So you will actually see me at least create one. So once you've done that, press next, and then you'll get to the stage where you need to create a disk. And this is the storage that you're going to allocate to this device as well. So I think 80 gigs should be sufficient. And then you have the option to select thick or thin provisioning. The difference is really that it's one will essentially use the full 80 gig regardless of whether it needs it, and the other won't use it. It'll use the minimum required. I'm going to leave this as thick just for the demonstration. Now once you're done, just press next once you're happy with those settings. So now you'll be brought to the summary page where you can see the configuration that you've just done. We're not quite done yet, so we need to edit the virtual machine settings by ticking that box there and then press continue. So we can remove the floppy straight away because we don't need that. With the with the CD drive, we need to allocate the ISO image to this CD drive so we can boot that. So if we just find that in the data store now, I'll just get mine up. And I think it's that one. So select the ISO file and then make sure you connect at power on, or else the device won't boot into that image. With the CPU and RAM, with the RAM actually, with the memory, I recommend using 4 gig where possible. You may be able to get away with 2 gig, but I always recommend using 4 gig, the more the better. Same with CPU, if you've got the resources, I would use 2 virtual sockets and 2 cores per socket, giving you a total of 4 cores as well. So I'm going to allocate 2 and 2 now, as you can see there. You just allocate what you can. I'd say minimum 2 gig memory and 2 CPUs. We've got our NICs there allocated, so we don't need to mess with them. I do need to add one more though. So while that new device is creating, as you can see there at the bottom now, I'll look to create that new network interface, or the port group that I need for my particular network. Now quickly going over to configuration on the ESXi host, I need to add a new port group for my particular network. And again, this is where the virtualization skills kind of come into play. If you're not familiar with this area, do seek the advice that you need. So I'm just going to, I'll use vSwitch or VM network, vSwitch 1 I think we're using, and I'll just give this a new name. So this is going to be my port group name. So what this is essentially a group that I can use to specify hosts that are connected within that group. So I'll just call that Sophos demo and continue there. No VLAN assigned, and we should be done with that. So we should be good now actually to power on with the device itself. So we'll power that on now. So you can see that's powering on, and what we need to do is we need to open the console. And once that's loads there, you can see we've got the option to start the install. So we'll just go ahead there and then press enter. And this starts the install. And again, we'll just press start on this. So it's just saying any data that's on the hard disk, if there is any, it's going to delete it, essentially overwriting it. We're okay with that. Once it's detected the hardware, you can just confirm that by pressing OK. And now we need to select our keyboard layout. So for me, I'll press English UK. And then with my area, I need to go to Europe and then London. And then date and time, specify. That time is slightly off, so I'll just change that time quickly. And then press next. Now this is asking us now which interface we're going to use to access the web admin, which is essentially the management interface to access the actual Sophos UTM. So we'll specify ETH0 because that's going to be our inside interface, and that's the interface that you want to connect from. So if we just flick back to this diagram here, we can see this interface here. The inside interface essentially is where we want to be able to connect to that Sophos UTM, because that's where our inside network is and our devices will be connected. So I'm going to assign an IP address that's relevant to my network. You need to assign an IP address and use a subnet that's not being used within your current environment. So typically with the ISP routers, you may have a network that's 192.168.0.x or 1.x. So you essentially need to assign a network that is not that network. So my network will be maybe slightly different to yours because I'm doing this in a lab. If you're unsure of what I'm talking about, then again, reach out to me in chat or on my website or any of my social media platforms, or reach out to somebody that's knowledgeable within networking and who can help you get a IP subnet configured. So my IP address is 192.168.104.2 for this interface, and the gateway is going to be 192.168.104.1. And then we'll just press next on this one now. Now this is asking us if we want to support the 64-bit kernel. Because we specified Linux over 64-bit, we want to select yes on that. And now this bit is going to be talking about the Enterprise Toolkit, which is essentially additional tools on top of the OS that we can install. So if you want, and I suggest and recommend that you do, press yes on that. Now this section is just going to speak about how the next steps will essentially erase the disk so that we can configure everything that we specified in the previous steps. That's okay because we've allocated the storage, so we just need to select yes on that so that we can proceed. And that's it. So now it will start doing the partitioning and formatting. You can see step 2 of 6 there. We just need to wait now until this process has completed. Back to this now, we can see that the installation has finished. Again, depending on the resources that you have assigned to the device, will probably determine how quick that install finishes. So once the install is finished, you can see now that it's asking us to remove that image file that we attached to the CD-ROM, the virtual CD-ROM, and also reboot. So when we reboot, it should automatically do that, and then after the system's restarted, it's telling us that we can access that web admin or that management interface on this particular IP address. So we'll just go ahead now and we'll reboot that, and then we'll try connect back. You can see that's rebooted now. It's not loaded into the disk again, and it's loading up the Sophos UTM there now. And there you go, you can see that the UTM is loading, so we'll just wait till that's done. And that's what happens if you press F2 for details. You just essentially see what's happening in the background. Useful if you maybe have issues or something's not quite working as it should do, but apart from that, you don't really need to worry about this, especially if you're not really interested in the detail from a technical aspect. So you can see that the system's still loading. We'll just wait until that system's loaded and we'll try connect back on that interface. Okay, so when the system is loaded, you will be presented with a screen like the one you're seeing now. And what that's going to do is it's going to tell us to go to, as it did before, this particular link. So you're not. So essentially, what we're doing now is we're going to type this into our browser, our web browser, and we should be able to connect to that now. If you're following along, your IP address is obviously more than likely going to be different. So just follow your IP address that you specified. So once you've typed that into your web browser, let me just drag this across so you can see. You have a warning similar to this, and the reason being is because, again, don't worry too much about this, especially if that technical. It's to do with what we call digital certificates and the web browser not knowing this certificate. Don't worry about it. Just go ahead and press advanced and accept the risk and continue, providing that you've typed in the correct IP address as is shown on your virtual machine. So once we accept that, you can see that the Sophos loads. In my case, we're using UTM 9. And now it asks to give it a host name. You can give it, any host name that you want. So in this case, we'll just say Sophos demo. Company organization will just say my house. You can specify a city if you want. So just say Bradford. And then country, select your country, self-explanatory. So say UK. And now this bit is particularly important. Make sure whatever you type in here, you don't forget it, because you will need this to log in with the admin username to manage your new device. So I'm just going to give a password now. And you can specify an email address. So I'll just do demo at p.com. What I would say is when you specify an email address, it probably makes sense to specify the email address that you used when you signed up for your free license. And then once you've done that, press I accept and perform the basic system setup. And what that'll do now is it'll start that system setup. If it tells you your password's not too simple, so in my case, it's telling me my password's too simple, so I'll just try and change something here. And again, make sure your password isn't too simple, especially if you're using this to control what your kids are accessing on the internet, etc. Because kids are clever these days. They might actually know what your common passwords are, and then if they find out about this, they'll try log in and start tinkering with stuff, and you don't want that. So let's see if that works this time. Yeah, so you can see there now it's telling me to wait 40 seconds while it configures everything we've just specified. And then once that's done, we should then be able to log in with the username admin and the password we've just created. And from that point on, we'll have access to the Sophos UTM user interface, and that's where we can manage everything and configure everything. So once it's done, it'll basically redirect you to the same page again. We just need to press advanced and accept and continue again. And as you can see now, we've done the setup, so now it's asking us to log in. So the default username is admin, and then the password that you've just created. So I'll enter mine now. And there you go, we can see that we're logging in now. So this is the initial setup wizard here. And I'll go through the basic configuration to get you up and running. This is very beneficial if you are new to the platform or want to get the basics set up straight away. So I do recommend following this through. So we'll just press next on that. And then this is a license file that you should have received via email on signing up on that link that is in the video description and the presentation and what I showed at the start of the demonstration. So do upload that license file. If you don't, you can see here you'll have a 30-day trial. So in this case, I'm just going to press next because I didn't get the file. You can see here that we're talking about, this is what we're talking about earlier on. We can see what Sophos classifies internal, local area network settings or LAN network settings. We can see the IP address is the one that I specified for the access to the management interface. So we'll leave that as is. We don't need to change that. And you can enable DHCP on this interface if for instance, you've got a switch connected and you've got other wired devices connecting, or you've got another router connected and you've got other wired devices connecting. I recommend not enabling DHCP on the Sophos device unless you have to, because as I mentioned earlier, if you place another router behind and connect to the Sophos, you can use that device to serve DHCP. And for those that are not fully aware of what DHCP is, it's a dynamic host configuration protocol, and essentially what that does is it assigns IP addresses to connected devices automatically, so you don't have to worry about doing that yourself. So we'll just press next on that because I'm not going to use DHCP in this demonstration. And now it's asking us, where the internet uplink is. So this is the link to the internet. So if we just go back to the presentation, so this is essentially this outside interface here. So we're just looking at the inside interface then. Now we're looking at the outside interface here. So one thing to point out, if you have configured your original ISP router as modem only mode, and I do recommend doing that where you can, this interface will more than likely be plugged into an interface which gets an IP address dynamically from the ISP. So essentially this original interface here would just the IP address that would originally be assigned here would essentially just be bridged across, and then the IP address would be assigned on the Sophos interface here. So if that is the case, let's just go back to this. We need to select, first of all, select the interface. You can select the if you know what the uplink type is, so if it's point-to-point over Ethernet, then select that. Again, if you're unsure, do seek advice, or if you know it's a standard Ethernet interface, then just go for that and select that. Majority of times it's going to be a standard Ethernet interface, and again, as I say, if you've got that situation where you're using modem only mode, you've changed this ISP route to modem only mode, then the chances are the IP address is going to be given dynamically in order for you to get internet access. So what you would do is leave that as dynamic. In this case, in my demonstration, because I'm using a fully virtual environment, mine's slightly different, so I'm going to specify an IP address. And then what I do is assign the static IP address for this interface. So again, this is a demonstration and I'm using a virtual environment, so things will be a little bit different here. So I am going to assign an IP address of 192.168.1.1/24. forwarder, sorry. So let's just say it will be 8.8.8. So this is just a DNS IP address that's going to forward lookups. So just press next on that, and then allowed services. So this is where you can configure essentially the firewall to allow services. So we can see here web services typically operating over HTTP and HTTPS. Go ahead and allow that. That'll allow you to browse the internet essentially. If you're going to be FTPing or using file transfer protocol to devices or servers outside of from the inside of your network, then allow that. If not, then leave it disabled. Essentially anything that you don't need, leave disabled. The ones you're probably going to need outside, well, it really depends actually on your environment and what you're doing, but the two really that you do need is HTTP, HTTPS, so web traffic, and DNS to resolve host names as well. You can allow ping to the device. You can see here that Sophos recommend for security reasons all these options are disabled. Typically you'd have these enabled if you wanted to test access to the devices, so I'll leave that on now just in case we run into any issues. You can obviously turn these off or reconfigure them in the future. Moving on to advanced threat protection. You can see here the UTM can perform real-time deep scanning on traffic, which detects advanced threats and keeps you safe from the latest threats, such as command and control, botnet detection, uses a global network to identify malicious attackers and stop infected machines from communicating with the swarm. So essentially what that is saying, this device can protect you from any maybe infected device that you have on your network trying to connect back to what we call a command and control system to launch a DDoS attack, say for instance. So it can do that as well. So I would say apply both of these. It's just an extra, it's added protection. You may not need it, but if it's turned on, then it will, obviously benefit you if you do need it. Once you've done that, press next. Now we get on to web protection. So as you can see, we're kind of covering some of the features that this device can offer. So we can see here that website traffic can be scanned for viruses and spyware. You can limit the types of websites that users can visit. So this is really good for, if you have kids and you don't want them looking at, say for instance, porn or weapons or gambling, things like that. You can block all them as well. So I would say, enable this one, scan sites for viruses. You can never do no harm in that, and help you protect against malicious websites. And then I would say, based on your environment and kind of what it is you're trying to control, block the relevant ones. So let's just say, for instance, we'll block drugs, criminal activity, extreme, block nudity, suspicious, and weapons. So we'll block all them as an example, and then we'll click next. Email traffic protection or email protection. So email traffic can be scanned for spam, viruses, and spyware if your users connect to a mail server outside of your company. You can see there's it's mentioning company there, but it's for home networks. Nevertheless, if your if you connect to mail servers outside of your company, enable POP3 scanner option. If you have a mail server internally, configure its IP address and blah 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 blah. This you probably won't need unless you're hosting your own servers. So if you're not hosting your own email servers, then I would probably leave this alone and click next. And now you see we get to the end of the setup wizard. You've got a summary of basically everything that you've configured. So what we'll do now is we'll just press finish. And that's it. So now we're on to, so those settings that you configured will be applied, and now you can see your lovely user interface. Now there's a lot going on here. It'll take some time to get used to, and we're not going to run through everything today, but I just want to show you the the relevant bits and pieces. So here you've got the interfaces that you've configured. With my WAN, there's nothing connected there. Like I said, I'm using a virtual environment, so there's not connected there yet. So you're not going to see any traffic there. But at least with the internal, you can see that traffic is, in that interface. We can see that system's okay. We can see the current system configuration, everything that we've got configured. So the 2 firewall rules we've got active, if we click on that, that's essentially going to show us what we configured in the setup wizard. So we can see DNS is allowed from our internal network to any, which is essentially outside. And we can see that we're allowing web surfing. We can modify these. Again, it takes time, so make sure you do look at any Sophos guides that might be available that may be able to help you configuring things within here. We've got country blocking as well, which is quite a useful tool. So say for instance you want to block any traffic to Russian websites, you can block the country as a whole. So any Russian hosted website you won't be able to access. You can see all the different countries here. Right now they're all turned off, but you can configure that, which is quite cool. Network address translation, if you're using that, and by default it looks as though it's turned on, so anything from internal is being natted to the external interface IP address. IPS features or intrusion prevention, we can see it's using, it's got a policy saying drop silently, drop packets. You can open logs, so you can actually view live logs, which is quite a cool thing to look at as well, especially if you're technical. There's an array of different features that you can access and turn on here, so anti-DDoS and flooding, different attack patterns you can look at and specify what to drop. And I'm pretty certain for those technical folks out there, this uses snot to snot rules. So quite a lot going on there. If we look at web protection, so we can see we get a nice, when this starts getting populated, we can see top sites that have been spent on, so the sites that I've visited most. We can see applications that have been used, which is cool. We can see top users, top blocked categories. We can see anything that's someone's tried to access that's being blocked. Very useful tool. Web filtering. Just click on that, and we can get to allow networks. But again, we've got live logs, and if we go to policies, we can add different filtering here, different filtering policies as well. Interfaces and routing, so you can change interfaces. So you can see here as well, quite cool. We can see the services that are being used. We can see the top hosts, and it gives you the IP address of that host. So you can see here one of my hosts. We can see the ports and the protocols that are being used, how much traffic is being used against each one of those. And we've even got a nice little concurrent connection table here, graph that we can look at as well, which is quite cool. So you can see there's an abundance of settings, and there's just so many to go through, and I'm not going to go through all of these right now. But there's just so many that you can look at, and I do recommend looking at. You've got VPN stuff down here, you've got remote access VPN stuff here. So there's so much stuff that you can look at, and I do recommend, as I say, taking a look at all the features and turning on what you think you want on or need on as well. You get a nice little breakdown here of threats as well, so you can see things that are being filtered or blocked based on the different features that are being used. You can see the resource usage as well, which is very useful, especially if you are wanting to keep an eye on the resources that you've allocated to this device. So we can see I'm using 26% of my 4 gig of RAM and 19% of my CPU. And we can see that the storage is split between log data and data itself. We can see what's being used there as well. So it's quite cool. I will leave it there, but what I might actually do, if there's enough interest in this video and comments, etc., is I will cover some of the features and show you how these work in more detail. So if you are looking at installing this, or you have installed this and you would like to understand how a particular feature works in more detail, then do reach out to me on this video or on any of my social media platforms, and I will look, if there's enough interest, that is, I will look at getting another few videos put together for the community. So with that, I will leave it there, and I hope you have found that useful. A quick deep dive into using this Sophos UTM, getting it installed and up and running using VMware or ESXi in my case, and the initial setup as well. Again, if you've got any questions, do reach out to me on my platforms. I will try and answer those questions for you. If you found this video useful, please do like and subscribe to my channel if you would like more videos, or to follow along with more videos like this in the future. Thank you for watching.